Welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. So I talked about my favorite horror movie, and my favorite horror story, and my favorite horror computer game. One more this month. I talked about my favorite horror role-playing game. Now, you might think you know the answer to this one already, and I'm betting you're wrong. Let's find out. I have a long history of role-playing games in general, a long history of horror role-playing games. I started off with White Box Dungeons and Dragons and original Black Box Red Band Traveler, and it was D&D for a while because that's what I had friends playing. And one of the first supplements I ever bought for second and then third edition GURPS was GURPS Horror, and that's one of the best horror books ever done, frankly. And even outside of the context of GURPS itself, it was just inspirational and beautiful. I started gaming with the group at my college in St. Louis, and the first game that I got involved in there, they were playing Chill. Chill's an amazing game. I had friends who told me such great stories about playing Stalking the Night Fantastic that I own a copy of Stalking the Night Fantastic, which comes as a surprise to no one. And of course, there's always Call of Cthulhu, and that's probably one of the defining books in the genre. I've written horror role-playing games. The Hot Chicks had some heavy horror elements. There are elements in Victory that allow one to use it for a fairly effective horror game. Eldritch Victory is a supplement for Lovecraftian horrors in your Victory system. And so all of these, none of these, not even mine, come close to my favorite horror game. This is going to be weird because I can't just talk about the good parts of it. My favorite horror role-playing game of all time, Palladium Books Beyond the Supernatural. Now this is the first edition. They did produce a second edition. This is not a bad book. I do not like it as well as I like their first edition. This is a recurring theme for me. While this book does tidy up the art and the page layout and some of the writing and material, that's part of the problem. Now, I gotta talk about some stuff that might not be necessarily positive when it comes to this book and this game. And that's okay, because the negative parts of it kind of add to why it's one of my favorite role-playing games. It's really my favorite horror role-playing game. I like that there's the warning up front. The Palladium's very good about their warning that the supernatural isn't real, and magic spells and psychic powers and monsters and vampires are make-believe. This book uses the Palladium system as the basis for its role-playing game. Now, the Palladium system is universal across all of Palladium's games. Beyond the Supernatural, the Palladium role-playing game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness, Ninjas and Super Spies, Heroes Unlimited, and of course Rifts, which is so broad and expansive. They had the license for Robotech and Macross, and so you've got all that material in this system, which means you can pull elements, thanks to books like Rifts. You can pull elements from any of these games, and mechanically they work the same as they do in any other of these games. And that's actually really appealing because you can mix and match things so beautifully. The system's a dumpster fire. It is not well organized. It isn't terribly well balanced. It's full of all kinds of, you've got to constantly reference the charts and the numbers. No two characters are made up using the same set of mechanics. You need to, every different character class or racial character class is generated differently and has different rules. And that's not optimal. But at the same time, it for the horror genre, it kind of works. Because, yeah, Call of Cthulhu is generally balanced towards not being very good at most of the things that you're going to try to do. Percentile system, very easy to understand, flows fairly well. The combat system's a little clunky in some of the earlier editions, but you're not supposed to be great or super at any of this stuff. You can learn the rules, you can learn the percentages. This is not, by any stretch of the imagination, the worst role-playing system ever written. Now, far from it. It's usable. It's extremely usable. And it's got this thing. There's a lot of fiddly bits. There's a lot of stuff. Well, if you take this skill, then these skills go up. And if you take this set of training, then these skills go up. And these skills have a cap, but these skills can go on further. And then if you have this stat, these skills can all go up to this point. But this stat allows this thing to be used more effectively. You have this way of determining whether your skills work, but this way of determining whether your combat works. It's not bad. It means that you're not going to be able to show up without ever having played this to a blank character sheet and go, okay, we got like 5 minutes, let's make a character and go. No, it's not as bad as GURPS for first-time character generation. But all right, if I want to make up a character, I need the book. Fine. Because I need to know what character classes are. Every Palladium book, or at least every core book, and a lot of the supplements for Rifts have new character classes, new occupational character classes, new racial character classes, and so the list of things that you can make is just huge. And in that list, there's background and detail for everything that you can be or do. That's not a bad thing, unless you're trying to optimize and streamline things. There's no optimization. There's no streamlining. Just none. That's okay. That means by the time you've got a filled out character sheet, all the blanks have numbers or words in them, you've got a name at the top of the character sheet and an alignment under it, and you've got numbers next to all those skills that you have numbers for skills for. By the time you have selected your guns and your abilities or your spells or your powers or your whatever you've got, if anything, you know that character pretty well. You're involved. You're kind of committed. You know what their guns look like. You know how much ammo they're carrying. You know what they drive. You know how well they drive it. You have an idea of what it took that character to get to the point where they're at in their existence. You have a grasp on what in the character's background brought them to this point, which is really good. It means you've got a certain level of involvement. Even if you haven't bothered to do much character background, you had to go through a certain amount of background to get that character made. Had to. And that works. Because now you're invested. Now you're committed. And now things are going to happen. Perfectly normal things. There are perfectly normal things that are going to happen for perfectly normal guns to do perfectly normal damage, and you can get by on that, and then things go south. I haven't fought every monster in this book, because I wouldn't be able to. There are things in here that your character just can't face, either alone or even in a small group. You need to bring tremendous amounts of things to bear, and so it's very Lovecraftian in that there's stuff in here that you might not have a chance against. You might be able to work something out, but you're not going to be able to deal with it straight up. I can't flip through this book without an adventure coming up in my head, without something I want to run, without something I want to do, without I want to see people deal with this, I want to see people deal with that. It's written just spectacularly well. Like most Palladium books, this is really deep. Deep in detail, deep in meaning, deep in content. So I can flip to a page, generally in the monster section or in the game master section, and there's an adventure there. There's enough to spike my head, to send me ahead. And then there's the artwork. Oh my God, there's the artwork. That's the main reason I like this book better than I like the second edition. Look at this thing. Just look at that. That's a, you don't want to face that in a dark alley. You don't want to deal with that. You know, that's, see if there's a similar picture. You know, you think I'd research this stuff before I actually popped the book open. There really isn't a comparable picture, because the artwork in the second edition is tight and tidy and professional and smooth, and all the lines are proper, and it loses a little something. It's a different cadre of artists, it's a different set of art guidelines, and yeah, okay, it is a different edition and a different book, and you know, that's okay. That is perfectly, yeah, here it is in this book. Nah. And you can see they're trying to get to the same thing. Okay. Second edition, not bad. First edition, pants shittingly horrifying. And its art style, there's something raw and experimental and just visceral in the first edition. The art makes points, and it's not all clean, and maybe it's that in the 80s and 90s, when I was digging into this was the raw stuff of imagination. Maybe it's just that it evokes more emotion. There's nothing to compare to this image in the second book. Nothing whatsoever. It's been a good run, but I think we're done now. Just roll up another character. You know, cover by Corbin. And, you know, stuff that happens on this cover is stuff that's going to happen in the game. And that's kind of horrifying in all the right ways. It's not that there is an overriding arc that makes it better than anything else. It's not like Chill or Stalk in the Night Fantastic. There's no single element of society or storytelling that makes it compelling. It's not that it has a tremendous cosmological arc like Call of Cthulhu. It's that you read this book, you feel something. You read the character section, you want to make a character. You want to make a character and throw it at stuff. It's like a psychic investigator or a latent psychic or a mage of some sort. I know magic. I don't know. I got there. The secrets exist, and you just have to look for them. I love that background. That background jumps up so much in my own writing these days. I'm a talented individual. Okay, all good stuff. There's a option to roll for just plain an ordinary guy, just someone walking down the street, just someone caught up in this stuff. So good. And then there's magic spells, and then there's rules about how this supernatural works within this game world, and all of that has potential. And then you get to the monster section, and between the artwork and the write-up of the monsters and the charts and the dice to roll and the different monsters, backgrounds, and then you get to pages like this. Thank God for Palladium. Thank God for someone who has proper visual reference for the stuff you're going to pick up and throw at people. And then you get to those pages, and you want to pick up that gun that looks just like that. It might not be the best gun in the book stat-wise, but you want your character to have that gun in their hand, and you want to point it at that monster, and you want to really, really hope it works. And if this should ever run dry, if this should ever run to a point where, okay, I've explored every possibility in this book, and I will guarantee you that will never happen. But I've explored every possibility in this book, and what's in here is kind of dry, and there's a whole library of other Palladium products. Got great old ones in their fantasy game, and you've got interdimensional beings and rifts, and you've got freaking mutant animals and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it is so engaging. I don't think it's my favorite game as a player, necessarily. Yeah, system and background's nice, but it's clunky. I don't know if it's my favorite system as a game master, even. Because system, clunky, and you've got to really dig in. I can't just, throw stuff off the top of my head like I can for some other games, because there's just such a rich and deep background here that, to give the players what they deserve when they're dealing with, something like that, I've got to know what that is and what the ins and outs are and what the rules are. Not just what the rules in the book are, but what are the cosmological rules? What are and not how many dice does it have, but what kind of deals can you make with it? No, I think it's my favorite horror role-playing game as a gamer in general, as a creator, as a writer, as someone who really wants to get in and wrap my fingers around the heart of the subject matter and squeeze until amazing stories come out. I've run a little Rifts. Rifts is known as the greatest role-playing game no one ever plays. It has amazing writing and an amazing background. It's got the clunky Palladium system, and it has there are dozens of books in the Rifts universe, and they're all just kind of, well, okay, I stopped collecting somewhere around Canada, but I got dozens of them, and they are engaging and they're enrapturing, and they are the artwork and the writing. I've been asked to run a Rifts game. I probably will for my Wednesday night game group when they're done with their current Fallout game in the victory system, which might be a little while, or we might all die this week. It's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. But and I'll run Rifts. If someone asks me to run Rifts, I'll run Rifts. I might not ever throw it on the table and say I would like to run this, but I'll absolutely run it if someone asks me to. Tried to run a Ninjas and Super Spies game. Didn't work out too well. I've tried to run a few Rifts games in the past. They start off pretty well, but some person in the group will have an objection to how things are going in a game, and because of the rules, the background, and I've run this once. I've actually run a game in this just once. It was an abortive attempt. It didn't work out very well. That was more the people in the group and how the social dynamics in the group were running at the time. But I've read this book, cover to cover, a number of times. I can find most of the artwork in this book by memory. I can navigate this book by the pictures. I've made dozens of characters. I've conceptualized dozens more, just put them in my head and got to the point where, okay, I'm ready to roll dice to see if I can make this happen, and I just moved on to other stuff. I've cross-referenced. I've taken, this book and the material that happens in here and the world history in the background that they do present, and it matches up to a lot of stuff in Rifts, actually, and that's kind of an amazing connection. And I've lost nights reading this book and the Rifts books that combine with it, and the characters. Because this is pretty definitively the pre-Rifts Earth. It's one thing to be able to explain why something's your favorite. I think I've done a pretty good job of it so far this month, but I don't know. You'd think if it was my favorite game, I'd have been running nothing but this, but that would kind of ruin it. It's always there in the background. The material in it, the artwork, and the concepts are always there. They're all part of a mishmash of things that I have in here instead of the periodic table. That forms that stream of consciousness that people surf on when they plan my games. It is my favorite role-playing game of the horror genre because it isn't any of the others. It doesn't take from anything I'm familiar with. Everything else has a foot dipped in the familiar. Has something, I've read that literature, I've seen that movie. This is original, and its concepts are original, and they fit into the larger meta concepts that form the Palladium megaverse. But the way that they're addressed, and this being my first real introduction to most of those larger cosmological concepts, if someone asks me to run this, I'll run this. If someone asks me to play this, I might bring the pizza myself. I'd contribute heavily to the group that was playing this, that asked me to participate. I'd bring this book. I'd flip it open to a couple of dog-eared pages and make a character that might survive through the campaign, and then again might not. And I wouldn't know. I make a Call of Cthulhu character, or someone hands me a Call of Cthulhu character, I have a rough estimate of their lifespan, or at least how long their sanity is going to last. character in Chill, I might make it all the way out. Character in Stalking the Night Fantastic, I'm probably not making it all the way out, but this, it's a coin toss. Uncertain. No points for comparison. You just got to go in and fight your way through it and maybe get out and maybe not, but oh my god, the story. Beyond the Supernatural, first edition, favorite horror role-playing game. Thank you for following along. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you have experience with Beyond the Supernatural or anything in the Palladium system, if you have got any comments or questions or want to suggest something for me to talk about, leave me a comment below. I'll love getting a comment. You'll love leaving me one. Really dug the video, go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. If you do hit the subscribe button, hit the little notification bell next to the subscribe button so you actually get notified when my videos come out. If you really dug the video, I invite you to hit me up at my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thanks for watching. My name is Scott Corum. This is what has mattered to me, and I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.